Welcome to a new daily top Askreddit video. Today's topic.
For those who have careers that keep them out at sea for long periods of time. What is the creepiest thing you've seen out in the water? Empty boat far out at sea. One time on an airport trip, my Uber driver was saying that he used to do security on tankers. That they would run across empty vessels more than you could possibly imagine. Just floating. Contents undisturbed. Wallets. Photos. Everything. They would hail them with no response. And, not knowing if it was a trap to get close enough to take over the ship. Pirates and ransoming the ship is apparently also more common than you'd think. Not the people though. Just the cargo. Anyway, the security team would have to board the ghost ship and scope out the situation. Even yachts. When there was no one aboard, they would sink them to avoid floating strike risks. I was like, surely there is some kind of finder's fee, and he was like, who are you going to call? Made me really wish a John Krakauer or Sebastian Junger would sink his teeth into that story. It would be a hell of a book. Edit. It seemed like there was no central body to call to salvage it. You're in international waters, so there's no coast guard. He implied that anyone who lost track of a ship like that likely lacked the resources, desire to retrieve it. I imagine the ship recorded in their log when they came across other vessels. But whether that information goes up to some authority IDK. Being myself in supply chain management, I know that oceanic shipping can be seriously sketchy. So although I can't corroborate the story, and part of why I posted was to see if it scared up any similar stories. It was related to me as fact, and didn't strike me as a tall tale. Next time he finds a yacht, tell him to message me because it's mine and I forgot where I parked it. Not so much creepy as eerie, but being out in the blue at night in a lightning storm in a slack wind. The ocean was very flat, no big rolling swells, just tiny little ripples. The whole world would be black, and then there would be a flurry of bolts, and the whole world would be silver. The ocean looked like nothing so much as aluminium foil that had been scrunched up and flattened out. The water looked like mercury, and all the little ripples made these very dramatic black shadows. I enjoy your evocative writing style. This sort of qualifies. Former Navy here. Somewhere off the coast of Italy saw a very, very small boat, not much bigger than a rowboat, about 9 or 10 miles offshore. This was sometime around midnight. There was no light from land, and no other ships around. It had a light. Our ship captain said it was a fisherman, and the fish would be attracted to the light at that time. Imagine being in a rowboat about 10 miles offshore in the middle of a pitch-black night. Waiting to see what finds you. That fisherman has no fear. Have you ever drunk Baileys from a shoe? Easy now, fuzzy little man Peach. Watched a documentary about a marine biologist who hypothesized the reason we have no giant squid sightings while on deep dives is their fear of man-made light. His way to test it? He'd take one of those two-man subs where the entire front was a large plexiglass-like bubble down off Monterey Bay and drop down to the bottom of the ocean. It drops down to 8K right off the coast. Then he turned off every light in the sub, and just sat there looking out the front bubble in the literal pitch-black darkness at the bottom of the Pacific for hours. Just waiting. Fuck that. I would fucking love that. Stealth mode while a giant sea monster floats right by sounds so awesome. I was on a 32-feet speedboat and got caught by nightfall in between islands. No night lights on the boat, navigating using GPS and depth finder. Captain knew the way like the back of his hand since he'd sailed those waters since he was a kid. But for me it was my first time in the middle of the ocean at night. Pitch black but for the stars. As above so below, it seemed as if the boat was floating in the blackest void of the universe. Years later I saw the movie Life of Pi and the scene where Pi is in his lifeboat floating in the dark among the stars, no above no below. It was exactly like that. I still have dreams about that night. The engulfing dark and the silence that was not silent. Surreal. We made it safely to port. Captain fitted the nightlights on that boat the day after. Some people will never experience what no light pollution is like. There are so many stars. Although the sound of water smashing against the ship is terrifying. So grateful to have grown up in a rural area. I remember so many nights just driving out to random fields and laying in the back of my truck, looking at the sky. A dead human body. It was the tropics and it wasn't in good shape. We turned it over to the authorities at nearest land. There were enough teeth left to identify it by dental records. Here's hoping the man's family got closure. Edit. Altral 2010 is correct. The body was double bagged and stored in the walk-in freezer until our next port visit. There was quite a bit of cleaning and decontamination involved, but that's the gist of it. I had that happen to me while surfing. Me and a few others were sitting at a point break when a body just floats around the rocky point. And right into us. He had drowned about 3 days prior, so it wasn't pretty. Oh god, that is horrifying. I'm now imagining swimming around in dark water and suddenly I'm faced with a bloated white corpse. We turned it over to the authorities at nearest land. How? Like, did you take the body and put it in your boat to the land, or did you tie a rope to it and towed it? Or did you just said, hey, there's a body near this coordinate? Sorry, too much morbid questions. They most likely stored it in the ship's walk-in freezer. Those things are super cold and it's fairly common to store a body there when a death occurs at sea. They most likely had a body bag to place it in. What I'm learning from these comments is that the ocean makes people poets. Legit some of the most evocative and beautiful writing I've seen in Reddit in quite some time in this post.